G'day crew and welcome to a short video. In this video I'm just going to cover some of the things that I wanted to cover in the last video but I left out because I ran out of time. The last video was just going too long and I felt that I couldn't put any more into it. The next video is going to be on the water and hopefully it'll be a good one. We'll see how that turns out, but for now let's have a look at the bits that I left out of the previous video. First of all, I'll just put up the track that I followed in the previous video. I make a bit of a habit of putting the track that I follow up in all my videos, and because of the length of the last one, it didn't get in. Occasionally I miss it when I have a bit of a technical hitch and I don't get the track, but most of the time they're in there. So anyway, here it is. This is where I went. This is where I trolled most of it. Some of it's just travelling around, but a lot of it's trolling. Make of it what you will. Most of you will probably recognise this rod. This is the rod that I built, and this is the rod that pulled in the 66cm snapper in the last episode. And I didn't really tell you how I'd set it up. At least I don't remember telling you how I set it up, so I thought I'd just run through that. So I put the Shimano Speedmaster 8 reel on it, and it has 300 metres of Raffler 24-pound braid, and topped off with 30 metres of 30-pound Troll Pro leader. I've started using the Troll Pro leader lately. I found it's pretty good. It's very abrasion resistant for a mono line, and it doesn't have the memory that some mono lines have. So I rather like it. I normally run about 5 metres of leader on my rods where I'm fishing some rough ground where the lines like to get dragged through reef. There's a reason I've got 30 metres on this one, and apart from the shock loading value of it, if you get a big fish on it, there's another reason. I'll go into that in a later video. But it worked pretty well. In the depth I was fishing, I was actually just fishing the mono on the line where I caught the 66cm snapper. I hadn't even got down to the braid, so 30 metres of mono I think is plenty as a shock leader. And it certainly worked for that fish anyway. I think it'll handle anything you like to get in the bay. The only problem you may have is bite-offs, and in that case it doesn't hurt to run 6 or 8 inches of anything up to 60-80 pound mono just as a really short bite leader. I do that on some of my lines. I haven't noticed any drop in bite rate because of it. It's only, as I say, a really short length you want to run if you're running something heavy. Just enough to, try and prevent some of the bite-offs anyway. I still get a lot of bite-offs, but I'd get a lot more if I didn't run some heavier line just on that last little bit. And anyway, I put the build of the rod up a couple of episodes ago if you wanted to go back and have a look at that. It's an Addendum 6 to 12 kg blank. Anyway, feels really nice. The spiral wound guides look funny when you're looking at them, but when I had a fish on I didn't even notice them. And they did help stabilise the rod. So pretty happy with the way they've worked, just as pretty much as advertised. I wouldn't go any heavier than this sort of rig for snapper in the bay. The Grappler 24-pound braid is a very thin braid, so you can get away with having that thinner braid. The 30-pound Troll Pro leader seems to be okay. You could drop back to 20 pound if you wanted to. Again, I wouldn't go any lighter than 20 pound in the bay, but this rod's doing double duty as a float lining and patrolling, so the setup I've got seems to work okay for both. Hope to catch many more fish on it. And that brings us to the business end of the setup. What I do here is I've got a ball bearing swivel on the end of this rod. Now, I don't normally use ball bearing swivels on anything other than my trolling rods or my deep drop rod. Everything else just has normal swivels. The ball bearing swivels are a bit dearer, but when you're trolling I think they're worthwhile. And I can just tie a leader, short bit of leader onto the ring there, or if I've got a coast lock on the trolling lure I can clip it on. Normally I'd tie onto the ring. And I use a small bead there, and that bead is only just big enough to stop the swivel going into the top guide. So it's just a protector for the top guide so the top guide doesn't get damaged by the swivel. I've had that happen on a couple of rods and lost fish because of it. So given the size of that bead compared to the size of the swivel, when it's trolling it's not going to have that much of an impact on the depth that the lure goes to. And it does provide that protection. So I think it's worthwhile in that respect. If you've got bigger guides, you need a bigger bead, and then you've got to decide whether it's a good or bad thing to have when you're trolling. But that's my setup. I've only caught the grinners and the one snapper on it so far on this particular rod, but it's a general sort of setup I've used for a long time and seems to work well for me. And that's all there is to the video. I'll be out on the water in the coming week, hopefully to get a good video for you for the next week. Until then, good fishing.